Good morning, dear children. Today we'll start an interesting chapter, that is the adventure of the blue carbuncle. In this chapter, a detective tries to solve a theft case. First of all, I would like to know whether you all know who a detective is. Well, my dear students, a detective is a very important person who helps in finding things. He solves a mystery. He starts with making guesses, investigates the matter, comes to a logic and finally deduces. Sherlock Holmes is the world's greatest detective. He is a dynamic character portrayed by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Children, let's begin the chapter, The Adventure of the Blue Carbuncle. And before I begin the chapter, I would like to tell you what a carbuncle is. Carbuncle is a gemstone. It's a precious blue colored stone. Right? The following extract is adapted from a Sherlock Holmes mystery by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Now come to this part. Arthur Conan Doyle, 1859 to 1930, was born in Edinburgh, Scotland. He was a novelist and a writer of detective and science fiction. His famous detective Sherlock Holmes and his friend Dr. Watson are immortal characters. Some of his works are A Study in Scarlet, The Sign of Four, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, and The Hound of Baskervilles. Children, Sherlock Holmes is a private detective. In this chapter, he is presented through the viewpoint of his friend Dr. Watson. You can say that Dr. Watson is the narrator of the story. Dr. Watson describes him as a sharp and highly intelligent individual. He begins this way. I called on my friend Sherlock Holmes on the second morning after Christmas. Underline the word called on. Called on means I paid a visit to my friend Sherlock Holmes on the second morning after Christmas. He was sitting on the sofa in a brown dressing gown, holding a pipe with a pile of crumpled morning papers at hand. So this was the state of Sherlock Holmes at home. So as Dr. Watson finds Holmes, he finds him wearing a dressing gown and he is engrossed in something. Now let's read out. Beside the couch was a wooden chair. Good couch means a cozy sofa, a furniture. Okay. On the back of the chair hung a dirty, worn, hard felt hat. So on the back of the chair there was a dirty, very damaged, worn out, hard felt hat. Felt hat means a hat made up of thick, firm cloth. Thick, firm cloth mixed with wool and fur. So this was the state of the room. There was a chair lying, and at the back of the chair a dirty, worn out hat was hung, and upon the seat of the chair laid a lens and forceps. So a lens and forceps was kept on the chair. Obviously Holmes had hung the hat over the chair in order to examine it. So it was quite sure that Holmes must be examining the battered hat. He must be doing his detective work. Perhaps I interrupt you, I said. So the narrator starts with a conversation. He says, maybe I've interrupted you. No, not at all. I'm glad to have a friend with whom I can discuss my results, said Sherlock. So Sherlock replies very courteously, children. He says, not at all. He is not disturbed at all. Disturbed at all. He is actually very glad, very happy to have a friend with whom he could discuss his results. The matter is an ordinary one, he continued, but there are some points of interest in it. He says, though the matter seems to be quite a simple one, but there are some interesting points. I seated myself in his chair and warmed my hands before his crackling fire. Children, as you come to know in the first line, it's a Christmas morning, so it's very cold. So at the fireplace, the fire is burning. So the narrator seated himself in his armchair and sat there while warming his hands. Although it looks very ordinary, a deadly story or crime must be linked to it. I guessed. So he made his own guesses. The narrator made his own guesses that though the matter looks ordinary, but it must be having some deadly story or crime linked to it. No crime, laughed Sherlock Holmes. Let me tell you how the hat came here. It was 4 o'clock on Christmas morning and Peterson, the commissioner, was walking home. So this is what the story is narrated by Sherlock Holmes. He says that it was 4 o'clock on Christmas morning. A commissioner named Peterson. Who is a commissioner? Commissioner is a door attendant in a uniform. That's why it's written over here, a uniformed door attendant. Right? So a commissioner named Peterson was walking home. A tallish man carrying a fat goose was walking ahead of him on the road. So a very tall man. He was carrying a fat goose along with him. Okay, and this man was walking ahead, means in front of Peterson. As he reached the end of the street, a little knot of rough men attacked the man with the goose. So what happened, children? So when this tall man, had just reached the end of the street, some group of ruffians, rough men refers to ruffians, they attacked the man with the goose. Okay, they attacked the tall man. One of the hoodlums means the gangster, knocked off the tall man's hat as he aimed a blow at him. So what did one of the hoodlums refer to? The gangster, that group of men. Okay, out of those, one person, he hit the tall man's hat. Okay, he tried to give a forceful stroke on the face of this tall man. The tall man raised his stick to defend himself and swinging it over his head, smashed the shop window behind him. So what did the tall man do? He tried to save himself from the stroke. So as he tried to defend himself, he swung his stick over his head and accidentally hit the shop window behind him. Peterson rushed forward to protect the victim. Who is the victim? Victim is a tall man. So Peterson, the uniformed door attendant, he tried to protect the victim, but the man, frightened by Peterson's uniform, took to his heels. Took to his heels means ran away. Okay. Now Peterson was dressed up in uniform. Seeing him in uniform, the tall man thought that some policeman is approaching. So he got frightened and he ran away from that place. The roughs also ran away as Peterson approached. The ruffians, those violent characters, those indisciplined men also ran away seeing Peterson approaching them. So Peterson was left with the fat goose and the battered hat that the tall man left behind. So now what was left behind with Peterson? The fat goose and the the damaged hat. Peterson wanted to give the goose back to the owner, but faced quite a problem. Mrs. Henry Baker was printed on a small card that was tied to the goose's left leg. Also, the hat does have the initials HB that have been inscribed on its lining. Lining is the inner part of the hat. So, what was the problem with Peterson? He wanted to return the goose to the owner, but he did not have any clue. To whom should he return? Though there was a printed card tied to the goose's left leg, and what was written on it? Mrs. Henry Baker, right? And there was some initials also marked on the inner part of the hat, that was HB. However, there are thousands of bakers in this city, and many hundreds of those are Henry Bakers. So, that in that city there were many people named Henry Baker's HB. So he could not even find a way to reach the owner. So what did he do? Peterson brought both hat and goose round to me on Christmas morning, as he knows such problems interest me. So what over here Sherlock Holmes says that what did Peterson do? He could not solve the puzzle, he could not sort out the problem, so he bought hat as well as the goose to him on Christmas morning. Why? Because he knew that Sherlock Holmes was quite interested in such kind of problems. The goose we kept until this morning when it seemed to be going bad. So he says, till morning they kept the goose as it is, but it appeared as if it was going stale. It was getting spoiled. Okay, Peterson will have it cooked today. So he says, now this is what it is informing, that today that goose will be cooked by Peterson today. I thought that I would keep the hat with me. Then he said, and the two things were given to him. The goose would be cooked by Peterson, but he kept the hat with him. Did you advertise in the paper so that the owner can claim the hat? These are the words of the narrator. Okay, Dr. Watson. He says, did you advertise in the newspaper? Did you give the advertisement in the newspaper that the owner can come and own the hat? No. Then how will you know who the owner is? We know what we can deduce from this hat. So these are the words of Sherlock Holmes. But you are joking. I don't see what you can deduce from this battered hat. So these are the words of narrator. He says that you are simply joking. There's no clue mentioned. Nothing could be. No information is given on the hat, out of which you can get the solution that whom this battered hat belongs to. Here is my lens. You know my methods. What can you gather about the man who owns this hat? Now, what does Sherlock Holmes do? He hands over his lens to Dr. Watson, his dear friend. He says, you know my methods very well. Now, you tell me what you can gather, what information you can gather about the man who owns this hat. Children, we are going to read up till here. The next video will continue.